The first time I saw my college sweetheart in 20 years, he was standing at the back of my husband's funeral. He didn't come forward. He didn't try to speak to me. He simply stood there, watching me with the same quiet expression I remembered from when we were young. For one strange moment, I wasn't a grieving widow. I was 20 years younger, sitting beside the man I had once believed I would marry. Then the service ended. People hugged me, whispered condolences, and slowly disappeared through the church doors. But Daniel stayed, and when he finally walked toward me, he didn't say, "I'm sorry." He said, "Your husband asked me to stay until you were ready." I stared at him, because suddenly, my husband's funeral wasn't only about saying goodbye. It was about a secret my husband had left behind, and somehow, Daniel was part of it. Before I tell you what was inside the envelope Daniel brought me, if you've ever wondered about someone from your past, stay with me. And if this story touches something in you, give it a like and tell me where you're watching from tonight. I always love knowing where these stories find you. My name is Aaliyah Brooks. I'm 40 years old, and until that funeral, I thought I understood my life. I had been married to Michael for 12 years. Our marriage wasn't perfect, but it was real. We had built a home, survived difficult seasons, made plans, disagreed about ordinary things, and grown into people neither of us could have imagined when we first met. Then, almost without warning, Michael was gone. For days, I had been functioning on instinct: funeral arrangements, phone calls, family members, documents, decisions. I became the person everyone needed me to be. I was good at that. I'm a senior architectural project manager. At work, people trusted me because I could walk into a complicated situation and find a way through it. What I couldn't do was figure out what to do with my own grief. And then Daniel walked into the funeral. 20 years earlier, Daniel Carter had been my college sweetheart. We had dated during our final 2 years at university, and back then, marriage didn't seem like a question. It seemed like a destination. Then graduation came. Daniel accepted an opportunity on the West Coast. I stayed in North Carolina. Neither of us cheated. Nobody betrayed anyone. We simply made different choices and assumed there would always be another opportunity to explain ourselves. There wasn't, until that funeral. After everyone left, Daniel approached me. He looked older, of course. So did I. But there was something familiar about the way he looked at me, something that made me uncomfortable. Not because I didn't recognize him, because I did. He handed me a sealed envelope. "Michael asked me to give you this after the funeral." I looked at the envelope, then at him. "Why would my husband have something for you?" Daniel hesitated. "That's what I came here to explain." I didn't open it that night. I couldn't. I took it home and left it on my kitchen table while I tried to convince myself that whatever was inside could wait. The next morning, I opened it. The first thing that fell out was an old photograph. Daniel and I stood outside our college library, smiling at the camera. I barely recognized the woman in that picture. She looked hopeful, carefree, like she believed life would give her exactly what she wanted. I turned the photograph over. Michael had written something on the back. "She probably thinks she left all of this behind." Underneath it were several documents. And that's when I discovered that my husband had known far more about Daniel than I ever realized. Years earlier, Daniel had worked on a university design project. That project eventually influenced a major property development. Michael's company had benefited from the work, but Daniel's original contribution had never been properly credited. Michael had discovered it and, apparently, spent the last months of his life trying to correct it. There were legal documents, financial records, correspondence. Michael had arranged formal recognition and compensation for Daniel. I sat at the kitchen table for nearly an hour. My husband had known about the man I once loved. And he had never told me. I called Daniel. "Did you know Michael was doing this?" "Yes." Why didn't you tell me? Because he asked me not to. That answer bothered me. But then Daniel said something else. He didn't want me using your grief as a reason to come back into your life. I went quiet, because suddenly I realized Daniel could have approached me differently. He could have reminded me of our past. He could have told me he still loved me. He could have made himself the comforting man waiting beside the grieving widow. Instead, he had done none of those things. He had simply respected the boundary. That made him harder to forget. Over the next few days, we worked through the documents together, and somewhere between the legal papers and old correspondence, something unexpected happened. I laughed. It was a stupid joke Daniel made about one of our college professors. The laugh came out before I could stop it. Then I remembered Michael was gone. The smile disappeared from my face. Daniel noticed. You don't have to feel guilty for laughing. I looked at him. I shouldn't be laughing. Why? Because I'm supposed to be grieving. He leaned back in his chair. You are grieving. I didn't answer. He continued quietly. Those two things can exist at the same time. If you enjoy stories about unexpected love, second chances, and the people who find their way back into our lives when we least expect them, you might enjoy my book, Confession of Unexpected Love. It's filled with romantic stories about moments that change everything, the kind you can settle into on a quiet evening, during a weekend away, or whenever you simply want a little companionship between the pages. If that sounds like something you'd enjoy, Confession of Unexpected Love is waiting for you. You'll find the link in the pinned comment. That was the first time I allowed myself to believe that maybe grief didn't require me to become a different person. But there was something else I needed to know. Why had Daniel and I really ended? For 20 years, I had believed the answer was simple. He left. I stayed. Life moved on. But when I finally asked him, he looked down at the old photograph. I waited for you, he said. I frowned. I waited too. He looked at me. Did you ever send me a letter? My stomach tightened. Yes. Daniel's expression changed. I never got it. I remembered that letter. I had written it after graduation. I told him I was willing to try. I told him I didn't want distance to decide our future. Then I waited. No answer ever came. Eventually, I convinced myself he had chosen his new life. Daniel had believed I had chosen mine. 20 years had been built on a letter that never reached him. I sat there staring at the man I had once loved. What happened to it? We don't know, he said. Someone intercepted it. That discovery changed something inside me. Not because I suddenly wanted to erase 20 years. I didn't. Michael mattered. My marriage mattered. But so did the truth. And for the first time, I wondered whether I had spent years protecting myself from a story that had never actually been finished. One evening, I finally asked Daniel the question neither of us had wanted to ask. Did you ever stop loving me? He didn't answer immediately. He looked at me for a long moment. Then he said, I learned how to live without you. That's different. I looked away. There it was, the feeling I had been trying not to name. But I couldn't let grief make the decision for me. I don't know if I can do this, I whispered. Daniel nodded. You don't have to. I mean, any of it. I know. He didn't reach for me. He didn't ask me to choose him, and somehow that restraint made me trust him more. A few days later, the professional matter involving his work was finally resolved. Daniel received the recognition and compensation Michael had intended for him. The practical reason for Daniel to remain in Charlotte was gone. Then I found one final document. It was another letter from Michael. He had written that he knew about Daniel. He knew what we had meant to each other. And he had come to believe that Daniel was one of the few people who remembered who I had been before marriage, career, responsibility, and grief. Michael hadn't brought Daniel back to replace him. He hadn't asked me to love someone else. He had simply refused to believe that his death should decide the rest of my life. That letter broke me, not because it gave me permission, because I realized I didn't need permission. I was 40 years old. I had already made important decisions in my life. I could make another one. The next morning, I went looking for Daniel. He was preparing to leave. When he opened the door, surprise crossed his face. "You came." "Yes." I stood there for a moment. "I'm not ready to promise you anything." "I know. I'm still grieving." "I know. And I don't know what happens next." He gave me the smallest smile. "Neither do I." I laughed softly. Then I said the one thing I had been afraid to admit. "But I don't want to spend the rest of my life pretending I don't feel anything." Daniel didn't move closer. He simply looked at me. "So what do you want?" I thought about Michael. I thought about the girl in the old photograph. I thought about the woman I had become. Then I answered, "I want to find out what this could be." Daniel smiled. He didn't make a grand declaration. He didn't promise me forever. He just asked, "Dinner?" I smiled back. "Yes." And that was it. No dramatic kiss. No rushing into another relationship. Just two adults sitting across from each other, finally given the chance to discover what 20 years ago had never allowed them to know. Months later, I found that old college photograph again. I didn't put it beside Michael's photograph, and I didn't hide it. I placed it in a drawer with the things that reminded me where I had come from, because Daniel wasn't a replacement. He was a part of a story I had thought was over, and when we walked into that restaurant for our first real date, I realized something. I wasn't choosing between my past and my future. I was choosing whether I was brave enough to have a future at all. And for the first time since Michael died, I wasn't afraid of the answer. I was ready to find out. Before you go, if this story gave you that feeling of wanting to hear just one more love story, I have something you might enjoy. It's called Confession of Unexpected Love. It's a collection of romantic stories about unexpected connections, second chances, longing, companionship, and the moments when love finds us in places we never expected. It's the kind of book you can keep beside your favorite chair, take with you on a trip, read on a quiet weekend, or open at night when the house is finally quiet and you simply want to disappear into a beautiful story for a little while. And sometimes, the best books aren't the ones we rush through. They're the ones we come back to when we want to feel something. If that sounds like the kind of book you'd enjoy, Confession of Unexpected Love is waiting for you. You'll find the link in the pinned comment. And if you enjoyed spending these few minutes with me tonight, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next story. Give this video a like if it touched you. Share it with someone who enjoys a good romance, and turn on notifications so you'll know when the next confession goes live. Until next time, take care of yourself, and never underestimate what one unexpected moment can change.